So without further ado, I'd like to hand over, the session to Upasana Nattoji Roy, who is actually the founder of Switch Studio. She's also a filmmaker and a motion designer, and she really does really amazing work. And she has some really great skills. And she's also a Bharatanatyam, an acclaimed Bharatanatyam and Kathak dancer. So she will be taking us through her works and how to actually build a practice and not just a project. So I think without further ado, I'd like to invite Upasana.
Hi, Radhika. Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
Hello, ma'am.
Good to be here.
Yeah, it's really nice to meet you as well.
So I think firstly, I just want to thank everyone for being here, which means you are staying in and not outside. Right now, it's crazy out there. Just a second, I have some feedback happening. Can you turn off the...
Upasana, you're on mute now.
So I think I'll have to go like this and not use my headphones. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how many of you know about me, and I don't really like talking so much about myself. Instead, I like to show my work, and let's jump into what we're talking about today. So Radhika and the team, I just met the team today, is thank you for having me. And exactly around a year ago, 1 month ago, I don't think any of us thought that we would be not just back to square one, probably in a maybe a little more hectic kind of situation in life. So,
Upasana, I think you're lagging a little bit.
Oh, all right. Just a second.
Sorry, guys, technical issues when we're all working from home and online. Yes, Upasana.
Just let me know if that lags again. And I am speaking, when I'm asking you, I'm sure it'll be fine, but it might just roll into a lag. So if it does, stop me. Is that fine right now? For now?
Yeah,
It's better. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so I was talking about what's going on out there is quite crazy. So please be safe. And today we will be talking about the challenges, a lot of the challenges that we are facing today, the challenges I have faced in my work, and hopefully some kind of little things that have helped me to get through that. So let me firstly share my screen. And I'm sure you can see that. So if you can't, you tell me. Otherwise, I know you can. And so, so when you see this, what is it that you really feel? Like it's quite a hectic image, and maybe you feel some panic, or maybe you feel some irritation or unsurety, or because all of us have joined this with some amount of stress. I'm sure about that, and everything is in panic. Not just what's going on, but I guess because of the future. The future is really feeling very unpredictable today. But that's the nature of future, right? We can't really know what's going to happen. We can feel that because of all of this, there's going to be a revised version which will be dramatically different from everything we have known. And all of us are living this very strange normal where we are meeting like this and are not in person. And it's a different pace of change. It's like the rules are changing every day, and it's not. But this one thing is that all this is not only due to the pandemic. It's become faster. Everything is happening much faster and in a much shorter period of time. But even before it, or if you see the global market system, designers, we've been like labor for sale, affected by whatever the dominant market trends are. And then technology has been constantly changing, and a lot of designers, old and new and young and people who are learning, they feel their jobs are at risk. It's really unpredictable. It's very overwhelming. I find this screen also very overwhelming and almost bleak. But the point is that we can't just give up. Right? We can't resign and we have to find ways to function, not just function, thrive. So what is it that we can really do? So I say that let's just focus on the now. So yesterday I shared one really old article about how tribal communities don't see coronavirus epidemic as a war. Instead, they see it as a symptom of some other kind of sickness or some other malaise. The primary malaise in our modern world is really the lack of mindfulness. We're constantly racing for what we really don't know. And that has also affected our design practice. So we are coming to what we are talking about today is, if I go through Instagram, if I stay there long enough, I can feel that stress that comes through, because there's so many people putting up there. It's not that they're taking shorter time to create it. It's just that there is so many people sharing at the same time. So, so let's prepare for the now. One of the things that I'd like to point out is the present is decided by the past that we've had, right? We are at this present because of whatever past, and the future is what we are going to do today. So fact is, we can predict the future without really predicting it, because we know whatever we do today is going to affect that whatever we get tomorrow, not just get, whatever happens tomorrow. So yeah, so with that, a few weeks ago, a senior designer asked me on a podcast what advice would be to my younger designer self. So I had started my career with a short film called Avatar, where I was exploring things of craft and animation. And that was a project that I started with. It was my diploma project, it was my final year project. And now, 20 years later, 20 saal baad, these elements which are part of my practice today are from that project. So my reply was this: build a practice, not just a project. So if you're doing a project, see what are the various, if you're enjoying it, more so. Find ways of, figuring what are the things in that can participate in identifying and outlining what your practice can do. So that naturally led to the question, how can you build a practice? So we'll do it in this 5 steps that you see. I'll break it down into 5 things. And just a few things that before we start, we would not be showing, though this is an animation, motion design, and film presentation, I will not be showing videos of work here because the internet really kills the videos. So instead, IDA, Radhika, and Devangana will be sharing the links of the stuff that we are speaking today at the end of the whole thing. So I'll keep mentioning that these are some links that you can look at, right? So let's start with number 1. Be agile. Be agile, learn to learn. That's the first, in fact, I unlearned to learn in our first year. So this, I would call this the most important piece of advice that I have given myself, and it has served me well. And I'll explain why. So in what we are going through right now, we need to be alert, we need to be flexible, we need to be quick to respond. When I say this, I don't just mean, yes, it's the situation right now when you're working from home, there are new tools that you're having to learn. But it's also life. Life will keep throwing stuff at you. And if you try to catch all of those things at the same time, you're not going to be catching any of them. Instead, it's better to take a little time, limber up, stretch up, do a little bit of, and then get ready to catch 1 or 2 or a few focused things that life throws at you. So that whole thing of being overwhelmed is a deep breath, really, and it's not a yoga class, but it does definitely affect. So I'll show you a project where I was pretty much challenged with everything that was new in it. It wasn't my first project. It was just a few years ago, and I don't know why that was glitching. Those of you who are in Bangalore might have seen this project or this film. It's an immersive film. We'll be sharing the link at the end of the film only, but it's really not, you should go and see it in the museum. So this film was called Nada. It's an immersive film for the Indian Music Experience, Bangalore. And it was a project that I dived into. When I say dived into, I mean like without a life jacket, without knowing how am I going to do it. And I must thank Indrajit for trusting me for that. But what was new in that? Pretty much everything. The scale was massive. I had never done a film for a museum. And the only thing that was similar to any of the projects that I have done was this was a new challenge. And so the new challenges are something which I've noticed is something which comes up with every project. If there is no challenge, I kind of lose interest. So the first big challenge was the story itself. The story was, we had to introduce the concept and the glory of Indian music and the museum, the installations within the museum, but in 5 minutes. Santana and Indrajit are the ones who wrote the script for this film also, and our advertising, TV background, and we've been telling stories in 30 seconds. But the difference is that this isn't anything based in 30 seconds. This is an artistic, immersive, you could call it a documentary that spans more than 6,000 years of information and evolution in just 5 minutes. So that was one of the challenges, the story itself. Second, the sheer scale. When I say scale, I mean in terms of format. The size of the screen was so massive. You can see in this is like a map of the thing. I can't really point it out, but it had an insane pixel ratio for a narrative film. Like it's these things which are generative and stuff like that. But when it's a narrative film with a character in it, and it's projected with 4 ceiling mounted projectors, I don't know if you can spot it. I'll show you the next one. So it had to be showcased here. This is under construction image. And the sheer thought of having my kind of visual style in that scale was daunting. I'll explain to you what my kind of visual style is. Then you would probably appreciate that. So these are some of the things that had to be tested out, the projectors had to align well and they're across a circular space like that. So this is an example of what it looks like on site. And this is one frame for what the visual style started with. And you have to actually, if you're sitting over there, you have to actually physically turn your body to be able to see the whole thing. If there's a sound somewhere, it's surround sound. So you can actually physically turn, you're not stuck in one place and looking at the screen. So I was looking around right in the beginning. So this is when the film's done and it's on site, but I'm talking about the process of getting there. One of the things is I'm looking for other examples of projects like this, and I really couldn't find one at that point. The only one I found, and I must give credit for them, because they really replied back as well. I wrote to them. This is a Australian company called Dirty Puppet, and they have made a film called Evolution. It's a beautiful film. You can watch it. I could send that link as well. This is a film in Hammond Hall. It's a music place in Melbourne. And when I asked them is there any pointers before I dive in for my planning itself? So they had used 2D animation throughout, frame by frame animation. 1 or 2 sequences were in 3D as well to help with the timelines. But his main advice was to get a sense of the wide and thin format. You can see how wide and thin it is by projecting it. So I didn't have a projector. We bought borrowed one and put it up, and we did look through towards the end. But in the beginning, while the visualization was happening, it was more of just imagining what it would be like. So that informs the storytelling as well. The third thing, which was a challenge, is the visual language coming to this type. The visual language, being a documentary, every frame needed to communicate. Because it's only 5 minutes, every frame is precious. You have to communicate the story. That's the primary objective. But yet, it needed to be a painting. Someone needs to want to sit there and, it's playing in a loop and stuff like that. So it had to create an experience. So the first draft was free from how I would create it. So I was creating storyboards. These are some of the detailed storyboards that we were trying out. It was a style sheets and stuff. So this is 3 frames. You might not be able to figure that, but it's 3 frames because it's really long. And so we had to create, firstly, the visualization, the storyboard parts. And simultaneously, we were looking at what will the visual language be. So in this, we had to keep stepping out, keep stepping back in, to be able to see what can we do, how can we create a workflow, because we are using regular machines. We didn't have we didn't have a render farm, and to just like 2 or 3 people who are doing it. So yeah, so the design language, what we finally decided upon, these are just tests and stuff like that. You can see my tribute to Escher at the bottom. So the thing is that the language itself was created in a way that they could become modular. So I could have people helping me if I. We also had, Indrojit also did some drawings of the girl. Each of us could do little bits, and I was taking care of the entire motion graphics in it. So the styles that we tested out, this was using, there was one plugin that was there, right, for mobiles. So first we tried putting stills into that and seeing if we can do it an automated kind of a system. But the styles just did not match up to you can see on the right, the more artistic version of the styles that we were looking at. So it was done frame by frame for the girls' part. We had shot it and then section. So it was one of the style tests we had done. And then this is another frame over there. So you can see how much detail is there in it. How many different kinds of images and styles and layers. I have lost count of how many layers were there. But some of these things, while ideating itself, we were looking at how it's going to play out. And now I do know how to make it much simpler than what we did at that point, which will make it much simpler for us in terms of planning for ourselves as well. So I was hinting upon what my next topic would be, the next point would be, which is to have a process. The idea is to be structured, but still be iterative. What does that mean? Like to have something where you have a building block. So design process, if all of you are design students, whether it's animation or any other kind of design, it's an essential building block. It's a framework. So that framework is supposed to work with you and for you. It's supposed to allow you the freedom to create while keeping you pegged to what the final goal might be or outcome might be. It can't be a rigid structure. Because then otherwise you can't be agile. The first step will be nullified. So it needs to be something which changes with you. It should allow the flow of creating. So if you see this, one of the design process that we follow for, for motion graphics and for film projects, many of you will know that this is the basic structure that is followed, where you have pre-production, production, and post-production. But in our process over the years, we have added discovery and deployment to this. Why? An example of the project that I showed before and the one which I'll show you now outlines why there is a need to do discovery and deployment. Deployment gives you an idea as to where will your work be seen. It contextualizes it. Without context, why are we doing any design? Whether it's a film, it needs to communicate, it needs to have impact. Without impact, let's just not do it. So even though I don't do deployment myself, I won't take on all of that. That's another company which will do it. But I will keep an eye on suggesting where, sometimes for my clients, I would even suggest where should they deploy. So some of the things that, and this whole process seems to be linear, but there are overlaps in it. So it's iterative in the sense, once I've finished one part of it, I might go to the next part. For example, in pre-production, some of the things which is in pre-production is, don't try to read that, but what I mean is, in pre-production you have something called scripts, right? You write the script of the film you're making. And while doing the script, you might realize that you need to do some research. So you might actually have to go back into discovery a little bit to come back and then put it into your pre-production because you have some missing links. So that kind of thing is what I mean by iterative. You have things which give you structure. You have a forward-moving process, but you also have ways of looping back if you feel the need. You see these two frames. You can see that the details are different between them. So in any process, the outer structure remains the same, the details change. So if I'm doing a title design project, or a music video project, in the discovery phase, we will have the music for which it's being done. But if I'm doing a brand film, which involves a story and creation of the story, then of course, music will come much, much later. So the details change, but the structure remains the same. And why do I like to structure it like that? It helps us create it helps us create firstly a schedule or a timeline to be able to map things onto. It also gives a very good way of creating costs, because before you start, you have to give budgets to your, not just to your clients, even if it's your own project, you need to know how much time, effort, and your resources you're going to be putting into it. So that budgeting of your time and budgeting of your the costs as well is something which this helps you do. And based on it, you can then squeeze back, saying that, I need more or less time. So it's very modular. We do all of these processes extremely visually, because that just makes it easier rather than having lots of text. So this is a case study. This project, the case study is outlining what we just discussed, which is process. The project started with a very big brief. We had some zillion anecdotes from the company. It's a 100-year-old company. They have the tiles itself, they have some 8,000, I don't even know how many tiles anymore, because they keep bringing up new ones. And they needed to communicate their core story to architects, homeowners, and the design community. They are the primary customers. So what was happening is that they are a very Instagram-facing brand. If you look them up on Instagram, you'll see that they are very active on Instagram. They do a lot of design programs as well. But what they needed is to have a story which was told cohesively about where they are from. And they didn't know which story to tell. So the first thing in the discovery that we did is we mind mapped. We mind mapped everything that they were saying, and then distilled it down. Don't tell 200 stories. Just talk about 3 things, which is the heritage, which is 100 years heritage, the process, which is the handmade tile, and the showcase, because these guys are everywhere. So when I say everywhere, that's also what informed the film and what we saw in the film. We took these Post-its and kept shuffling it around exactly there on that whiteboard that you see, and we then brought it into a story flow. The story flow, what it did was, it made it very clear that we needed to start with something which was their tagline. The tagline is, every floor tells a story. So we start with their tagline, the experience of standing on that floor. All of you must have, if you've been to a social anywhere in India, that is the BFT floor. So that's the now. That's where it's being used now. So we start from there. That's what we decided. We would also end from there. So we have a beginning and end kind of thing, top and tail. It's just like writing a story. It is a story. So then we do a time travel, because we're talking about heritage. We go back in time, and while we are doing that process, we touch upon the timelessness of the process of the handmade tile. And then we come to the present and project to the future as to what this company is going to do. After doing this, while thumbnails, we create thumbnails for the story. While that was happening, we were simultaneously checking on the style sheet. So this is the final style sheet that we froze on. There is a case study for this whole thing, which is available on Medium. The link of it is also going to be shared. How did we arrive at this style? So the elements within the style, if you look at it, it has the picture that you see is actually a photograph, and they used to touch up black and white photographs earlier. So this is a photograph of their 100-year-old company, 100-year-old factory. And this was in Gujarat. And what we did is created a new language using the old, but also putting in textures from their product, which is, they have these beautiful textures. Nothing, like nowhere in the whole film did we use any other texture apart from the tiles themselves. So that created a design language. We also needed to check how, once we arrived at this, after iterations, we decided, okay, we need to check on other other sections of the story, whether this is going to work. So after doing this, we knew it is going to work. Why? Because these are images of the founders, which are an important part of the story, and the images were really small and really not very good quality. But when we did this, we figured, okay, it can be fun without being cartoony. So when we say animation, we typically think, oh, it's going to be all, gags and fun and for children. That's not true. It's the design that decides what's happening in terms of the tone and mood and what we're communicating. So when we arrived at this, we decided, okay, there are going to be some parts which is going to have live action within it as well. So this is a film which has bits of live action, a lot of motion graphics, some animation. It's all mixed together, like a lot of my work. So we took one section of the storyboard and we tried that out. We thought, okay, let's try this out. How are we going to do it? So what we decided is the hands that you see in this small, tiny thumbnail were short. And that had to fit in to this motion graphics background seamlessly and continue in the same style that we have decided. So that's why you have the thumbnail and the style sheet in the corner there. So this is one of the processes that we did at the beginning shot. We shot the lovely Kalpa Neha, and then the others from the studio as well chipped in and really helped. And so they sat in and then we did these tests. So after doing these tests, we figured, okay, this is going to work. The combination of this black and white archival thing meets, even the clothes were the type. So it was all mapped out. And so we had, the clothes were also made out of the same textures. The other thing that I was mentioning is about being iterative and keeping a view on the larger picture. Being an Instagram-facing company, as well as doing a lot of exhibitions in exhibition centers, there were two different requirements and opposite requirements for the film in terms of deployment. So coming to why deployment is important to think about. So we didn't want to have to do double work. No one has extra budgets for things like that. So we planned it at the design stage itself that one, we are going to have a version of the film which will work without a voiceover, for which we needed to have text on screen. Text on screen means subtitles, which is good. So instead of having subtitles, we decided let's have the text as part of the design itself. So this is the example of why we put in this, every frame, every sequence has its key text. We also tested the same thing for a square format, because that's exactly where you'll be seeing it on Instagram, which has a lot of followers. So we did this, and we did this, and we did this, and we did this. So we kept checking every frame pretty much to make sure that it would work on both. So all of this, naturally, you will be saying, okay, how do you get the time to do this? Because clients are always wanting the work before. We were very lucky to be there, also a lovely friend now, but it's not always the case. You need to make the time to be able to do this. And both the projects that I showed you are very time-intensive, R&D intensive projects. So that brings me to point number 3. I hope everyone's not gone off to sleep. If everyone's here, just can someone give me a shout that you can hear me? And
Yep, we can.
great.
Yes, ma'am, we're all here.
Lovely, lovely. Okay, so point number 3 is free time and yourself. Who wouldn't like to? I'm sure all of us feel like we are working all the time right now, especially because we are in front of the screens. If we are meeting, even we are in front of the screen. So it feels like we are working all the time. So I can't emphasize enough how dramatically my relationship with time has changed over the last year. And it's been something which it could have gone completely belly up, but instead it has become better. So we all have a person we know. This is something which is, there's a link which you don't really need to see it, but it shows you the day in dots, which gives you a panic attack because every single second is passing by and it makes you know that every single second is passing by. So we all have a person who does that, is constantly running to catch up. They are either take on too much like me, I love to, or they can't manage their time. Until recently, I was that person, right? Racing from dot to dot as time was rushing by. And it was just not enough time, ever. So things changed when I started to look at time through the work that I do, through the practice that I do. am developing. I wouldn't say that I have a practice. It's constantly changing. It's always going to change. That's why it's fun. So things changed at that point. Through the process that I have outlined and I showed all of you, I started looking at that there is a need to alternate between this macro and micro view all the time. So if I look at the tasks that we do to create a piece of work. So if you think of, when you learn something, when you learn something new, you're learning something in a focus time with the teacher or the faculty, and it's a focus time. So if you take it as a dot, but then you're expected to practice it, read more about it, try it out, that needs to be a dash. So a dot is a small piece of time, dash is a longer piece of time. The same thing applies to, to the practice that we have, which is any conceptual work, ideation, inspiration is a dot. But the doing of it is the dash. So over the course of time, this squiggle that you see is what tends to develop, because you do something, then you think a little bit, and then you do something, and you think a little bit, or you research it, or you check its validity, and all of that. Just to make sure, unlike this guy, just make sure that this happens aligned to a goal. Otherwise, it will just fly off. You just keep doing and thinking with no final outcome. So it's important to have a goal as well. So one way that I shake up my relationship with time is this process thing that I was telling you. The other thing is to keep changing the pace of the work I do by diversifying and in changing the spectrum of my projects. It's not very easy, but for everyone, people who are super specialized, I think you might find it a challenge. But it's helped me to, one, never stop learning, because I like to dive headlong into things that I don't know. And so I've shared projects like museum project, brand film project. We also do motion design and title design for shows. In fact, that's where my work started after graduation. That was the only place where we could do concept to final delivery, because 30 seconds, they can trust you for it. So my interest in title design goes back to student days when I first studied. It was a self-study for a paper that I had to write, and I studied Saul Bass, Moritz Binder, and Kyle Cooper, and of course many others. And later, a lot of that classic pieces of learning process, I used that in show packaging and channel promotions, freelancing with Channel B and MTV. I had a job in Dubai 1 and 10 Sports. So before I started Switch as well, there's some 200 shows and events that I've done titles and promos and stuff like that for. So that whole thing led me to start Switch, in fact. So this is the project with which I started Switch, which is the first title design project I've done for Indrajit, who's my brother. And it was a short film for the film. I got my first, I would say, break to do titles. And what happened was something surprising. It was selected for showcase in the title, which is something which is very vetted. And it was the first one from India. And it was also a finalist in the SXSW Excellence in Title Design. So the interview and all of that, the talk about Indian title design at that point, this is 2009, it's quite some time back. So that is all there on that link. We can share that with you. But more recently, not really recently, I think 8 years ago, 7 years ago, this was another one which we did, where we did the titles for Pankaj Bakshi. And more recently, Lena is one of the things that we worked on, apart from many other title design projects that we do. So all of these projects that you're seeing are things which happen simultaneously. It's not that I do title design for a little while or I do TV for a little while. It was like that when I was in a job, but when we started Switch, the practice is to diversify. The more the merrier. Even for Leila, within the project, we had done 3 versions of the project, which was, looking back, it's really lovely that we had that range of ideas and we were so excited about it. So all this variety is built into the practice itself. So it keeps things fresh and I can change the time. So things like this, like OTT and stuff, they normally take much shorter time compared to a museum film or a brand film. They will be the turnaround time for the project is much faster. So so it gives variety. So some things are always really fast, and some things are more languid, and you can actually get the time to think. So having variety of projects that you work on without becoming a jack of all trades and master of none. If you see, there is a common thread across all the work that I've done, either visually or in terms of the style or in terms of the story that is being told. So at this point, we come to all of these things are very actionable things that everyone can actually start thinking about and work into your own practice. So these three ones are more the doing aspect. So do we have any questions so far? I don't think I have the chat open.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
Please type in your questions, or you can ask them yourself. You can unmute yourself and ask,
Yeah.
basically.
So basically, if up to this point, do we have? I think someone was unmuting. Yes, Karthik.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to know when you are going from a storyline to a project map. Okay, I'm from IT. Okay, so how are you arranging the pieces? Because to me, from here, I thought it was a puzzle. Okay, and also the effect that sometimes in a film, you are showing the later part first, then flashback, and then again you are showing the benefits,
Yeah.
flashback. So how do you do that? You know, puzzle. How do you write the puzzle basically?
So that is, see, I wouldn't say that, yes, there are some formulas which work, because if you, the formulas typically is like a narrative or a storytelling. If you look at storytelling, there is always a graph, right? Beginning, middle, end. That is a narrative structure. I'm not going to go into the details of a narrative structure, but in anything, when you're playing a game, you are getting an introduction to things. Then you have something which heightens the excitement, and you meet either a conflict, and then so that kind of, in every film there needs to be a minimum of one graph in any story. But in a film, typically you would want to have a couple of graphs and one which peaks very majorly. So you might have smaller graphs, which is kind of building interest, and then you have one which peaks, and then you have your resolution. But that is a typical structure of a narrative film. The ones which you saw, not the OTT stuff and not the title design stuff.
Okay.
But some of the title design stuff which have a story also follow the same thing. But otherwise, that's pretty much how, and it is a puzzle. You have completely nailed it in terms of thinking of a metaphor for it. It is a puzzle. We play with it as a puzzle. I prefer to put it down on Post-its. So when I'm on ideation phase, my table will be full of Post-its. Though you have mind mapping softwares and stuff like that, I find it's much more fun, and I lose a lot of points also with it. But anyway, the point being, so it's like solving a puzzle. And when it fits and the pace is right, is when you have gone through it, you've told yourself the story, you've presented it to the client, you've presented it to others who are participating in it. Taking feedback is very key to this. Either you need to be super critical of your work. I tend to be over critical of my work sometimes, but that doesn't help either. But you need to have a sounding board. So I think that is one very good point to have for building your practice. To always figure out whom can you trust. Someone who is not going to break your confidence, but who's going to give you constructive and actionable feedback. Identifying that person, if you don't already have one, is part of the process as well. So I hope that helps.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions right now, or should we just dive in?
Are there any other questions? Anyone?
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Hello, I'm Mayank, and I'm a student in animation, and I really wanted to know from your perspective how it was getting into the industry, like what problems you faced when you started off.
So firstly, I have never seen it. My problem is I don't see it like one industry really. Yes, design industry is now, but it's like multiple things, because I've always been interested in multiple things, which I will go into later. But one of the things is always wanting to learn. So there were a lot of people, like coming from a particular institute, you might feel you're going to get things in a red carpet because you're from that institute. Firstly, shedding that is the most important thing, because that is the first thing to come in the way of learning anything and also be accepted. It's a community. You make a relationship with people whom you're working with. It's important to have that camaraderie. So, so building that, doing some amount of groundwork. If you have some skills and stuff like that, okay, you could build. But even without the skills, the attitude is everything. So I think that is the primary thing which I feel helped me. I have been lucky. I have had wonderful mentors and friends and people who have really guided me to. And I've had a variety of projects to be able to dabble in. So to keep a lookout for those are also an important aspect. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I hope that helps. So I think let's move on to the
Yeah.
one. And we take questions again at the end.
Yeah, we'll have a session at the end again for questions.
Yeah.
So I'm just turning off my video and turning it on again and to see if I'm having lag and stuff.
I think you're just lagging a little bit. That's about, yeah. Maybe just come like closer to the screen and just then it might, yeah.
I'll jump into the screen. I have a very big screen, I can do that. Okay. Yeah. So let's move on to the fourth point. All right. So from fourth and fifth points, I think which are more conceptual. It takes a little more of a deep dive within yourself to be able to be authentic. You know, be authentic. It's so easy. Just be authentic. It's not a just be authentic. It takes time. It's a very important factor for building a practice, whether you're a freelancer or you're a studio. It not only creates the style of the work that you produce and get known for, but it also informs the kind of projects that you will take up and deliver well. So very often people take up projects, so jo bhi aa raha hai, lete jao. That is important. There are various elements at play why people do that and why all of us have done that at some point or the other. But it's important to always track back. Micro, macro, my favorite, is to always keep a look as to what is it that truly is your passion. So one of the questions is, what did you want to be when you were a kid? There's some real raw truth in this, and it's worth listening to. Sometimes they come back, if you ignore them long enough and you're old enough, they come back to bite you. You might be sifting through, and while you're sifting through these things that you wanted to be when you're a kid, it could be a chowkidar, it could be, and that's a very, very interesting job as well. You meet a lot of people. So all jobs are interesting, but what is it that you loved doing or wanted to do? And while sifting through that, it's not just a go down memory lane type of thing. While sifting through that, try to put them into a list, organize them a bit. Differentiating something like your passions and your niches. So there's a difference between your passions and your niches. I'll get to that as well. So I'll just embarrass myself a little bit here. And these are some of mine. I'm sharing it so that you can take yourself a little less seriously. Don't laugh. I had no clue about politics. Okay, so you can see the other ones. The dancer, that is me. I didn't have very many pictures of things because when we were small, we didn't have digital cameras. So anyway, and that pilot, I wanted to be a pilot. I had thought of putting an astronaut, but I didn't. I wanted to make things. I really like making things, but I also like math. And I see a lot of connections between math and my dance. It is, music is math. But in all of this, one thing which is mismatched, of course, is I had no clue about politics, and I still don't have any clue about politics, but I don't know why. When I was around 5 or something, I wanted to be Indira Gandhi. And so that is one of the things that I ignore, and I'll not look it up or take it seriously, but look at the rest of it. You see it's a mishmash of some very nerdy, some little creepy, some little crafty, maybe even a little bit of grace somewhere there. So all of these things inform what I call my authentic voice. I don't know if you're seeing a pattern in the kind of work that I showed you. In terms of visual language, you might. They're all a mix of a lot of things. It's always an amalgamation of things. So my areas of practice has become, so dance is something, I'm not a professional dancer. I wish I was. I was trained to since I was 6 years old, and I did Narangetram when I was 9 years old. And music was part of my family. If you're Bengali or South Indian, you have to do music, art, theatre, and tech, because I love mine. So tech is, I'm not high-end tech, but I like to dabble in it. And I'm excited to know about new tech. But all of this, it's when I was talking about niche and passion. So when I gone into NID, I have a very convincing elder brother. But apart from that, I thought animation, why did I take that up, is because it was a melting pot of everything I was interested in. And I was, I felt like I could channelize all the passions into niches. And I could marry them somehow and have my cake and eat it too. But it's a different thing. Of course, all of these projects which you will see now, they don't really have major opportunities and funding in India. They're all creeping in. But till last year, I was constantly waiting for or looking for opportunities and funding. It's that the shift happened over this pandemic. So I couldn't thank the pandemic. But yeah, the shift happened because of being able to have some time to mull over my work and what I do. And they have, so I'm doing these things now without waiting for opportunities and funding. So we will see if people are interested in doing it, and then I'll show you some of that. So this is one of the projects which it was Bharatanatyam, Odissi and Mohiniyattam, 3 beautiful dancers at Talaghoda, and it was very quick, very small interaction and collaboration for just small bits of the performance. And this triggered a collaboration which led to another project, which I'll show you in a bit. And and then we also did TEDx Gateway. We designed this show for Mati Bani. It was a 20-minute piece to present in the TEDx Gateway. So that is the screen on top that you see. And that was the first time that typically in presentations, they have 3 sections of that screen. So they have the PPT and they have the person's video. So the Mati Bani performance was the first time that they actually used it. So this was in the Dome in Bombay. The idea was, and this was for specifically for a Mongolian wedding song, which was part of that lineup. It's a very lingering, haunting track. But for me, the best part was while we were doing the rehearsals, when this was playing, the musicians actually stopped to look back. For me, that was like, okay, so if they are, and they stopped and they sat and they watched it while the music was playing. So, and then it got a standing ovation, which was lovely as well. So these are a few of these, and these are not ready images. You will not get plugins like that. So this show was something which was really fun. There were 10 songs, totally different genres and styles. And so I got a chance to create 10 different experiences within one show. Again, deployment, because this show was designed with mind, keeping that it could go into a very big theatre, immersive kind of theatre, as well as we could have it in St. Andrews, or even I could put it up in one hall in a society and do this show. So it was that agile in its deployment. So the design of the things were also created in this way. There was also an aspect of live action. Sometimes they wanted to put live action in some sections, in the middle or in the side. So the design was also sort of like that. So you can see this is a marriage. It's really a marriage of my music, my dance, wanting to be part of technology. It's not really, I didn't really use tech per se, but if you call After Effects and working with the switchers and things like that, tech, that is. So I do coding and stuff over here. This is one of the pieces that I really liked within it, because I really want to work with vernacular. Anyone working with any vernacular and Hindi, I'm happy to participate. So this was using that. And this was like a karaoke of the song. So it was Gyara Matra song. Anyone who knows about the Gyara Matra, it's quite a challenge. And it was like a karaoke that was happening simultaneously. This brings me to a project which is very close to my heart, and I think Prachi is here as well. So this is a project we are working on now. Is Prachi here?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Prachi. So yeah, so this is Prachi's concept. It's her, she's driving it. When Was Dance is a performance conceptualized totally by her. So we are jamming together because I have a dance background and I create these visuals. So we are jamming together to create something which is like a cultural experience. And it's quite a deep collaboration because we've been talking about it for more than a year now. So we are working on it now. And it includes Bharatanatyam. She's a Bharatanatyam dancer. It also includes Varli. Varli, not just the art that you see here, also a lot of the craft like masks and things like that. And new media. So when I say new media, there's going to be projection, there's going to be an interaction between her and the background, and it's all led by the story that she has put together. So I won't be talking too much about it, but this is the space it's in, because it's still work in progress. This is she's done a lot of research about it, and now we have started work on it as well. So so thank you, Prachi, for this is the collaboration which I mentioned, which started from Kala Ghora and is now, that's where the Kala Ghora picture is there. So this also led me to an important aspect, which is it's important to build an ecosystem for ourselves. If you are doing something, like if you are a yoga, if you want to do yoga every morning at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and everyone around you is waking up at 11 o'clock or waking up at 10:30 or very lazy and doesn't want to get up and do it, it will rub off on you. So it's important to build an ecosystem, however small, with co-creators and collaborators. And today more than ever, because how many jobs are you really looking at? Even if you're doing a job you might be doing to keep your creative juices flowing, you might be wanting to do that. But please note, I'm not saying something like, I did say build a tribe, find your tribe. I can be cool and say find your tribe. It's not a group of people just hanging out. It's an ecosystem where there is life, there is livelihood, there is a shared set of values that people have to build that ecosystem. So there's an African proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Come together. It takes a little while longer to coordinate, to know others' mindset and ways of being and stuff like that. So a lot of the work, why am I pointing this out now? A lot of the work that we're doing now is very much in this space, but it's always been there. The structure in which we work, we have freelancers who do certain parts, and we have built a relationship. These are freelancers who, if I have a project, would jump in to do stuff. That's because there is an ecosystem and we look out for each other as well. So this is where the intersection of a lot of our studio projects are. So even our clients and the commission projects which you saw, they're not standing apart from it. They're also part of this ecosystem. How and why? Because some of them, of course, like BFT was, I would say, kept it open, the R&D part and stuff like that. But they're also part of the ecosystem also because they help us invest in this. So stuff that I'm being able to earn in terms of time and money from there is something which I am able to put into this. So especially, we don't have those funds, and I find it takes very long to look for the funds and grants and things like that. That's another job altogether. I'm looking at creating first. So this, what you're seeing, is something which is 17 years old. 17 years old. And I had pretty much shelved it for multiple reasons, my thing with religion and all of that. So that's a longer conversation, which I won't get into. But this was waiting for the right time to be pulled out. So this is 17 years ago. And what I'm showing you now was in October 2020. So which was just recently. And so what happened there was, it was a fellowship with Jaga, lovely organization. They do a lot of very interesting work in Bangalore. And so I picked up some new tools and did some toys and tech toys about interactivity. So what I talked about right in the beginning, agile. I'm still learning, like my kid is learning how to code. I'm trying to learn alongside. But I'm not going to be a coder. But the reason for doing that is to learn a new language to see how it can contribute to the work I do. bringing how do these come together. What this has given me is that the 17-year-old project and this recent development, when I step back, I can now see the various possibilities that these tools, these new kinds of ways of working, and updated practice can actually do. So this has led me to one of the main focus areas of my practice today, which is I'm really excited about the rebirth of storytelling traditions in liberated technologies. This has been put together. It can't be a very long sentence, but when I say rebirth of storytelling traditions, now when I say tradition, I don't mean old and boring and no one wants to see it. Tradition is something which has survived for generations and years, not just because someone has hammered it down your throat. It's also it has some way of being classic, being eternal, because there are some values which are very deep rooted and which have been passed on generation to generation, either because they were still relevant or they have adapted and changed. I don't know the details of that, but this is what I'm studying and I'm interested in learning more about. So, and instead of using traditional or age-old, I like to call them pre-modern. Before this modern world has, industrialization and all of that, before all of that, the way people would approach their work. And liberated technologies, why liberated? Because technology tends to be a tool of power, not just a tool of creation. So technologies which are freed from a power plane is accessible to everyone, this is inclusive, is something which everyone is aware and knows that would really be important going ahead. But even then, there are a lot of people who are not on computers, for sure. There's larger number of people don't have computers and are not in this digital world, but still all the shopping taken by people who are. So there is a need to have a constant a dialogue, an exchange between these two worlds, because there is a lot to learn from both. That brings me to the project that we are doing right now, which is this is work in progress. There's nothing that I'm not going to be sharing links to this because it's still happening. It's a set of micro shots. I'm calling them micro shots because they're really just one shot on the theme of home. But the use is of using pre-modern art forms like Patachitra, Chitrakarthi, Kashmiri paper mache art, Matani Pacheri and more. I think Vishpala is here as well. So she has been very kind. You can see Eki Beki is also mentioned there in Roy Studio. Vishpala, if you could just say a quick hi.
Hi, and thank you. This has been something which I wanted to do and didn't know how to go about, and I'm really happy you have taken this forward.
Thank you so much. Your support has meant a lot. You connected me to the super artisans, and we're doing all of this in lockdown. We are doing this all remotely. So Vishpala connected me to some. Devika also connected me to some of there are people who work with crafts and have been working with crafts for a long time. They are on the ground, they know, and they have the relationship. How am I to create a relationship with a Patachitra artist through this medium was a huge challenge. So I would call them mediators, they would help create this ecosystem that I'm talking about. So these films are, let's come back to what the films are. The premise of this film is we are taking home as a topic. It's something which all of us have been stuck in or wanting to be in, or has a huge importance over the last 1 year. So taking something like that, which is a common theme, but it's uniquely individual. So that is why we chose this. And this has led to conversation and dialogue between artisans for now and me. And what we are doing is we're sharing each other's ways of working. How do they create? How do I create? What is there? Not just their tools. I'm talking about the thinking, the worldview. How do they look at the world? Their ways of working. How do they see home? And a lot of them are art forms which have been talking about mythological stories. And so they have been doing Ramayana and Mahabharata and various others. stories like that, or very abstracted forms. But when you tell them to think about their own story, it takes a while. Like if you don't have a brief, talk about yourself. What do you do? So this led to lots of dialogue, and that is what we wanted for this. It's not, the outcome is not just the short film. It is also this dialogue, which is a start point. So we will be opening this up as diploma projects and internships with students after we finish this one set. So anyone interested can write to me about it for the next set that we are going to be doing. And this whole project, we've been very lucky to have Sahapedia has supported. I'm part of this film fellowship, and this project that we are doing is the backdrop of this documentary, which is not only showcasing the process of this interaction and stuff like that, and documenting that process, how we did it, what were the things which worked, what are the things which didn't, but it will also, while doing these films, home films, we're also figuring out ways of creating digital and new media outputs from these projects. So there are many like that. We have mind mapped all of that, and we have. So that is going to all these various other outputs and outcomes are going to be showcased in this thing that we have. This has a link. It's a static page right now, which is called My India Story. It is a platform for dialogues on identity, plurality, multicultural through the Indian lens. And how do we do it? Not dialogues by talking. It is dialogues by doing. So we have certain projects in it, we have certain workshops in it, and it's not a workshop where I come to teach, it's a workshop where we learn and do together. So we are populating that, we're creating different workshop modules as well within this. So summing up, now that we've gone through this, I'm just quickly going to sum up. I think, how are we doing on time? I think we're a little over time here.
It's fine.
So, all right. So summing up, number one was be agile, learn to learn. If you notice, though that was my first point, at every single project, not just the ones which are showcased here, also any project that I do, that need to have something new is key for me to decide whether I'm going to do the project or not, or whether it excites me. Even if there is nothing, I find things to do, so that's fine. The second is build a process. So be structured, yet iterative. Be flexible, don't be so stuck up. It's basically that. Be okay with feedback, but also be careful about surrounding yourself with people who give you productive feedback. Free time and yourself, the equation is all that it is. So we used to micromanage every single minute of the day, that after 2 minutes, after 5 minutes, I'm going to go do this and wake up at so-and-so time at 5:30. And instead now, so we have moved from Bombay to Goa in November. And now we have blocks of time. So in the morning till about so much time is things for myself, things where I have started gardening and I haven't killed too many plants. So all of that has happened by changing that relationship, my own conversation with time, and actually how I play it out. It's not just an esoteric thing, it's also how I've played it out in terms of what I do. So the day is in blocks. If something doesn't get done in that block, I'll have another block to do it. And then I can automatically prioritize. So it becomes more instinctive rather than being micromanaged. Be authentic to yourself. I can't emphasize much more on that. I've already pointed that out. And build an ecosystem, build a group which work together well, is what I would say is the most important. All of them need to come together, and for every step you need to be looking at the other, and micro to macro all the time. And so it's taken a while to get here. Looking back, all of this that I said is not something which I knew that one day I will have a good relationship with time or anything like that. It's clear that looking back is when the dots join, connect, when you look back. So that's what Steve Jobs had said. After all this presentation, I had a thought, like I didn't mention, what is a practice? We could discuss that over the questions as well. But I just mentioned quickly what practice has come to mean for me. It's beyond projects and the outcomes that emerge. It is an act of creating and living it, and the lifestyle and principles that support that creation. That's what the practice is for me. And it's a way of being, and it's a way that you make sense of the world, and being people who are storytellers. How and what stories you tell, how you tell, are all part of that practice. So, something I said in the beginning, the present is decided by the past. So what we are doing today is different, definitely impacted by the past. The future is what we do today. So today we decided to stay in and be here together. So I'm sure it has impact. So we can predict the future without predicting it. And every action we do together can bear fruit tomorrow. So let's be mindful in today. Let us be present. Let us stay safe. Let's stay sane and just keep at it. So I think all of us just need to keep doing what we're doing. Realign, yes, but keep doing. Thank you. And questions?
Thank you so much, Upasana. I think it's been a really engaging and colorful conversation and sort of like understanding for us to go through. And I think we do have some questions. So let me just get to it. So I think, well, Milind says here that he said, well said, find the tribe and more than that, the ecosystem that works for you. Milind, would you like to touch on that or anything? Because I think you have given good feedback on the session.
Hi, Milind. Good to see you here.
Okay, maybe we'll come back to Milind. But let's get in touch with Karthik. Karthik, I think you have a couple of questions. Would you like to ask them?
Hello.
Yeah, Devanshu?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Are we done? Yeah.
No, so we're just looking at the questions right now. Okay, so maybe I'll ask on Karthik's behalf. So Karthik asks, if you will need an ecosystem, what kind of partners will you look at?
So it would depend on the project that we're doing. So the project is what kind of binds it together. Doing something together or creating something together is, I find, the most productive way to create an ecosystem. Rather than, yes, we make friends. How do you make friends? If you really look back, you make friends either through college or through your workplace or the building that you live in. There is something which is common which binds you. And that binding for us, as design practitioner, is something where you work on something together. So depending on the project, pointing that out, you've kind of had an idea as to the variety of projects that we do in our studio. So yes, people who do coding and tech, people who do projection mapping, people who do 2D animation, illustrators, musicians. Like I could make a list of all the people who can participate in stuff like this. The home project that I was talking about, that is currently open to the pre-modern artists, because that is a conversation when I'm talking with that particular community. And I'm looking at connecting that community with animation for now. Animators for now. Why? Because I find that they are natural collaborators. A lot of these crafts. So a lot of these crafts were already storyboard the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would imagine that they would be a natural thing that we would be able to create our own style with. And Indian animation does not have its own style. Why? Actually, I would say Indian animation does have its own style, but the problem is we're looking for one style.
Mm. Yeah.
We cannot have one style in a diverse country like India.
Mm.
So that's the primary, we keep telling us, it's not really India. That's true or not. But there's so many people doing such amazing work. We have an Oscars nominee right now as well, right? We had one earlier as well. But I mean, the ecosystem will depend on the project we are doing. So like Vishpala and me, Prachi and me, we haven't worked on a lot of projects constantly. But right now, we are an ecosystem.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay.
Upasana. I think he has a follow-up question. So he says that if yes, then how do you sustain the ecosystem as this has external effects such as skimming, but not going to the core? So he says you would need connoisseurs, but suppose you were a design architect for BTX, Malam, or Navratna, how will you control the absurdity of the situation?
I didn't understand the second part of the question actually. I don't know.
Maybe you could ask it, like if he could ask it himself or something.
Yeah. Karthik, are you there?
Say, see, designing. I have been a design engineer. Okay, so I have my basic design concepts. So that's my intention to join here and speak. I'll give you the context. We are currently creating a story for our product. Okay, ourselves. Okay, we have brainstormed for 2 months, but we have still not got the effect. Okay, if have you seen community influencers are going to be used for, say, propagating the message? Okay, but how will you sustain them, or they will sustain you? Okay, both ways, vice versa, against things which you don't like. Say
Okay.
BTEX Malam, say BTEX Malam, it will be different for different sets of influencers, and it will be different for different sets of stakeholders. Okay, the stakeholder here is the end consumer. Okay, if I am a connoisseur, I would look at Taj Mahal tea, okay, as my ideal tea or beverage. But if I am an average guy with say less taste, okay, I will go for Wagh Bakri tea. Okay, so what I'm trying to point out is, how do you manage this balance between, because community is, completely differentiated. Okay, if you take Gujarati or Marwadi community, or you
Yeah.
are targeting, but you are targeting the message to the entire nation. Okay,
That's exactly where I think not just my approach. There are a whole lot of people who have been doing a lot of work in this area. One is the homogeneity. That is something that Radhika and I had first started.
exactly.
The homogeneity of design is because we are trying to sell the same thing to everybody, but everyone's not interested in the same thing. The
Yes.
need for scale
Uh-huh.
is an industrial concept. Industrialization. It is a concept which has come from industrialization and from the dominant market system. The
Okay.
dominant market system, an example is, say, if you go to Instagram, I love Instagram. I share stuff on Instagram, but you'll see that there are trends of things, they look the same. You don't know whether they have come from a village here or some place in East Europe, because everyone's doing the same thing, because everything is being homogenized. That is my biggest problem. We cannot try to have the same, one size does not fit all. And it's about time that we accept that different, when I say communities, we need to scale down now more than ever. As designers, we need to really look at, what do you resonate with? We have the internet to create our tribes. We have the ability to be able to make those groups more today than ever. So why are we using the internet has now become a new kind of colonization. And that's something which I'm very aggressive about. The fact that, this is not, it's a faceless thing that you're not being able to fight against. Earlier, the British were here, we could say, "Arey, let's go fight with these people and send them out of the country." What are you going to do about this right now? We are talking in English. I think in English. I don't even think. So there's so many things which are, all of that. Having said that, it's important to now not think about one solution will fit all.
Okay.
So that's, I think, the primary thing. And everyone will now, like, say, how many hours have all of us spent in front of the screen over the last year? We are pakaud. We only want to be in a place which either gives us value or we can contribute to effectively. And that is going to happen more and more. And the faster we are okay with it and not try to figure business in scale, but in terms of actual value, I think that's going to make, and that is something that we also suggest to our clients. I'm not only talking about the projects which I'm doing, which are my passion projects, but we also do, we suggest to our clients about, don't try to sell to everyone. If you stand behind your product, you will sell something which you're actually giving value. Then it is a service. Otherwise, we are calling it the design service, and it's not service. It's finally they're a vendor, and it will be the vendor kind of thing. So I think that is something which all of us who are part of the design community in any way, if we are mindful of that, it would really make a difference.
So the essence of the message is that you have to capture the audience as many differentiated or as many differentiation is there or segmentation is there, and pitch it in 5 seconds. Okay. Now my question is, what would you think about the predictability of the message?
So that is something I am not understanding your question exactly. So this is for social media, or is it for?
I understand that. Yeah, not for social media. I'm not asking it for social media. Say, suppose I am an account manager, okay, and I have to promise my client that 5% or 10% will be the up move. So how would you build in predictability into your message?
I don't think I'm equipped to answer that, because that's something that I do. You frankly, can we predict what's happening? You were talking about the future and what.
Yes.
We can predict and control what you are doing. You can't generalize like that at all. So in terms of business numbers and all of that, that's pretty much why I'm not in the factory setup of animation. I have a very boutique. I prefer to do that because I believe I can create value better that way. So that is something which is, it's a different area of altogether. Yeah, I don't know. I obviously didn't.
I hope.
Yeah, that's it from my side.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that was a really engaging conversation, Karthik. And I think we've also learned a lot from this conversation that was happening. I am mindful of time, and I do know we've gone a little ahead of time. But thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Upasana, firstly, for taking us through that amazing sort of content that you had and the learnings that we got from it. The animations were really great as well.
Yes, absolutely love those little doodles, the little jumping dots and all of that. Really.
Yeah.
I think those dots will now make an appearance. They have been they were lovely. I didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of character animation for a while, so thanks to you guys. I was just kind of dabbling with the squeaky things. It was fun. It was fun to create and fun to connect with you guys as well.
I think moving forward from here, we might see how we can actually engage with Upasana in a workshop where she can take us through 5 different steps. So we can actually do it in a more activated manner and see what our practice could be and not just a project for everyone here. And other than that, I'll also be dropping a link here of the document that Upasana has shared with us, which is for the links for the videos. So I'm just going to be dropping the link here. So whoever's interested, please access it. It's very simple, and you can just have a look. We'll also be putting this later online, or we'll be sharing it with every other participant as well. But thank you so much for attending this session. Upasana, anything else from your end?
That's it. Thank you so much, and I will be sharing all of it online hopefully.
Great.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your time. It was wonderful. Like, we are all like looking for new ideas all the time, and then your presentation was really great.
Thank you. I just changed the access because earlier it was restricted.
Yeah. Omkar has written that access is restricted. Yeah.
Yeah, so now I've changed it to anyone with the link. You could try it again. It should work.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
and any questions, you all can email me as well later as something that you want to discuss or any interest in any of the projects we're doing. We're happy to connect as well. So thanks, IDA. It's been really nice working with you.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah,
we look
thanks,
forward,
Upasana.
yeah, we look forward to connecting with you in the future as well. Let's get on this and let's see how else we can actually impact the creative community in India.
Yeah. Thanks. Oh, Milind is a social media specialist, so he specified. Please mention your social handles. There you go. Milind, thanks for reminding me.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.